there is this new report out saying that tens of millions of Americans are being targeted with a ton of disinformation in online black spaces ahead of the 2024 presidential election. It highlights 3 significant threats to black voter engagement in November, including getting people to not care about voting or the election at all. President Biden's broken promises, real and, by the way, made up, and stoking divisions amongst black voters via certain influencers who knowingly and unknowingly spread disinformation, like, for instance, Candace Owens, who has millions of followers on various platforms. She said blatantly inaccurate things, like, by the way, vaccines cause a, quote, explosion of childhood cancer, and that the Uvalde shooter who killed 19 children was transgender. NBC's Marquise Francis just dropped a story on NBC News.
Not black media.
Joining us now with more on this. Break this all down for us, Marquise, if you can, and what more you found in this report.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. You know, disinformation is something that people talk incessantly, seemingly about online or in person amongst their friends or whatnot. But they don't talk often about what is it and how is it impacting people. So this report out by Onyx Impact touted as the first of its kind to really understanding disinformation through online black communities. And they identified half a dozen core online networks that are reaching or targeting specifically black Americans. And they named gateway influencers and platforms, far-right activists, and media outlets, the black manosphere, black extreme nativists and separatists, health skeptics, and foreign actors. And they included a bunch of different examples, as you mentioned, Candace Owens just before, even the Fresh and Fit podcast. These are places that people go to for information, but when the information is not true and inaccurate, it has a devastating effect.
So, okay, we got this report. They've identified the issues. They've identified the misinformation and the problems. What can be done about it, and how much does Onyx actually think this is going to influence voters one way or the other come November?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in this report, they actually offer strategic guidance in which to combat this. Normally, I would think, okay, you run away, right? But they're actually saying, no, engage with these platforms. They offered actually several key ways to engage, engaging with them, not just before an election is coming up, but consistently. Also identifying trusted messengers and discrediting bad actors, which is super important. And overall, aggressively countering that disinformation. I actually also spoke to the CEO, and she has something to say about that as well.
Black voters are likely less susceptible to many disinformation narratives, given their deserved higher levels of skepticism in institutions and government overall. But just like other communities, when disinformation is targeted and sophisticated and comes from messengers with standing, it can be incredibly effective and dangerous.
Yeah, and so this report and its findings are hoping to inform us as Americans, as, you know, people who are actively engaging in our democracy. And one of the things that I also found in my research is the fact that Black Americans actually over-index when it comes to social media in this age where everything is put behind a paywall. Right. Oftentimes, Black Americans are getting their information from YouTube and from Facebook. And so when that information is not vetted and not actually correct, it can really have such a large impact.
So when you talk about engagement, when you talk about combating it, who's doing it? Us as citizens, all of us?
Yeah.
Black, white, brown, no matter what color, engaging in disinformation and fighting back.
Engaging and holding accountable.
Holding accountable, speaking facts.
If you listen to a platform regularly, and they don't do this all the time, but they have someone on that platform who is spewing disinformation, it's all of our responsibility to actually combat that and say, hey, that's not okay.
Speaking facts to truth.
Absolutely.
Truth to non-facts. Yes, got it. Okay, Marquise Francis, thank you.
So I want to welcome my brother from the motherland right now, Ahmed Caballo. We met him when I was in London, when I was living in London. He's now moved into the great continent, and he's the leader of sharing disinformation. I've heard. What's up, bro? How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Welcome.
So that video is one of the brothers who end up contacting you as he's responding to this larger project that the sister is doing, who happens to be from the lane of Stacey Abrams. But yeah, tell us a little bit about the information you got. They said there was like 1,500 accounts that was flagged for this spreading disinformation. I haven't found the other 15. Jared has reached out. I'm not sure if you heard anybody else, but in particular, African Streams was named in your response. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was bizarre. Before I continue, how's the sound? First time I'm using these headphones.
It's passable. We hear you.
Shall
we
I
just
try
know
without
you.
the headphones? Shall I try without?
I don't know. Now you're muted. Now you have to unmute.
Hold on. How's it without the headphones? Is it better?
That is a little better, yeah.
Okay, I'm a bit more comfortable as well. So, yeah, we got an email from Marquise saying, you know, he's writing a article based on a report. He wasn't clear in the email who the report was from. So my first reading was that it was a report that NBC was going to do because he didn't state otherwise. And he said, do we want to respond? And he sent the email at like 5:20 p.m. on a Monday. And then he said, you have until 10 a.m. Wednesday to respond. Then he goes, scrap that. You actually have until 10 a.m. Tuesday to respond. So, you know, some people that have read my response were like, oh, you got a bit emotional. Yeah, well, damn right, I was emotional. Guy pissed me off. Like, you're gonna send an email saying where there's allegations of misinformation from African Stream, and do we want to respond to it? But he hasn't given a single example. A single example. It's like me approaching you on the street and say, you're a thief. And you go, well, what have I stole? It doesn't matter. Do you want to respond to the allegation you're a thief? Well, I can't really respond to the allegation of being a thief unless you tell me what I stole. You know, I might have inadvertently taken a grape in a supermarket, you know, when I was 10 years old. Is that what you're accusing me of? Or is there something more serious? You know, it's really difficult to deny something flat out without even given, you know, one shred of evidence of what it is that you've misinformed people about. So that annoyed me. He misspelled our name as well. But what annoyed me more is I sent the statement to him because I was under the impression, I got some advice from journalist friends, that if you issue a statement, they have to include the statement in the piece or at least allude to the statement. So he didn't do that. And worse still, he didn't even contact me back and say, this is the report that we published with your name. We included this part. So I only found it as I was just about to press post on the statement that we issued back to them. So the whole thing just kind of stunk of unprofessionalism and, you know, misinformation in the journalistic sphere is a form of unprofessionalism. So it was a bit ironic that this guy, with his grammatical mistakes and misspelling of our names and lack of proof and evidence, is talking about misinformation when he's publishing an article about us with no evidence. And then finally, what makes it even worse, if you actually read the Onyx report, we're not mentioned in there. African Stream's not even mentioned in the report.
So I did want to ask, did you actually see the full report, or are you responding to the initial download of a few pages that we were all able to get? Were you able to actually get the full report that they claim you can get if you reach out to them? Okay, yeah, that's what because I just wanted to clarify that because you're right, they don't mention you in this initial downloadable report. But they claim, but the NBC story, you are right to say, does mention you as being in there. So are you showing, is that, whose PDF is that?
That's mine.
That's the Onyx.
Oh, I know, but no, I'm saying because the reason, because I have mine pulled up and it looks like we highlighted the exact same things. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, that's
I was
mine.
like, how are you showing how are you showing my screen?
but so a couple things, like, again, the sister, which I find. Go ahead.
Sorry, my bad. Because I actually wanted us to go through their claims. And so I wanted you just to scroll back, but go ahead, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, make your.
So what I was saying was, like, so she's tied, and they've been working on this type of project since 2022. This is early as I could find them talking about it. and there's actually a team of them, and they have a couple Latino people. So they have like the misinformation for the Latino people, misinformation for the Black people, and she's leading the one for the Black folks. Again, but she comes from, all of them actually come from Stacey Abrams' camp. And
Yes.
and
Yes.
even in the report, I'll put it up again, but as they was naming like the Breakfast Club and people like that, there has been some level of redacting what they said about the
Yes.
Breakfast Club, especially in that article.
But
And they
Yes.
said the earlier version of this article misclassified the Breakfast Club. According to the report's criteria, the report classifies it as a gateway influencer, not as an outright distributor of false information. So that was kind of interesting too. But back to Jared's hold on, I'm sorry, I had to go back to Jared's point. Like there's a couple things that's been happening here.
Yeah. Before we move on, I just want to talk about that. Yes, she comes from the Stacey Abrams camp, and she's like, there's pictures of her, you know, with Democrat signs and etc. If you read the NBC article, and you kind of, as a journalist, I always look at something and go, okay, what are they trying to say here? What are they trying to say? So they said, if you was to break it down, that these platforms promote misinformation, and they say we promote misinformation about Joe Biden, yeah? And then later down in the article, they then go on and say, but Joe Biden still has a lot of support in the Black community. You know, two out of three voters under the age of, I can't remember what it was, young people still support Joe Biden. Amongst older generation, they all still support Joe Biden. So don't be worried, essentially. So this whole piece, the aim of it is to frighten people as the elections are coming up, to stop putting out critical coverage of the incumbent president of the United States. That's what it, if you scratch beneath the surface, that's the aim. That's the aim of the piece, the timing, the examples that they give. You know, Candace Owens, I'm not a fan of Candace Owens as well, but obviously she's a huge supporter of Donald Trump, huge critic of Joe Biden. So, you know, this is the NBC, which is one of the media wings of the Democratic Party, doing what it does in the run-up to an election. That's my assessment anyway.
No, I largely agree. And that was that. So that beyond anything we were going to talk about today, I was really interested in seeing how the report was put together. And I wanted to see the full report because other than what you just showed quickly scrolling through there, Geechee, this is sort of the problem. If you read the report, so what we're showing, just to clarify for our audience, Ahmed is talking also initially about an NBC story that we just saw in the reporter interviewed describing. What we're showing here is the executive summary of this report that NBC story was claiming to be covering. So I just want to be clear about the two different things that are sort of being discussed here. And then the third piece of it, of course, is the full report, which they do say you can get if you reach out to them, which I have not heard back since Tuesday. In my own request, I would have loved to see the report because I'm very curious how they put this all together, only to confirm after reading the executive summary to confirm or disprove my conclusion that is very similar to what Ahmed just described, that at the end of the day, this is about defining who is going to be critical of Biden and who is not. It is not about assessing the accuracy of the claim of information or disinformation. In other words, as far as I can tell, I haven't seen the full report. The executive summary does not clarify exactly how they've determined or assessed what is accurate or considered disinformation. But when you look at it, as you highlighted also, Geechee, there's that one first giveaway is that one of the initial takeaways is they're looking for, what is it, that they're claiming anyone who aggressively is counter-revisionist or counter-revisionist in their history, or it's critical of civic disengagement and broken Biden promises, which they consider to be part of disinformation narrative. So if you engage in, again, a critique of Biden's White House, and the broken promises, you're involved in disinformation accordingly. Now, don't know how they quite determine that, but the last thing I just want to say in this initial, and I'll stop my ramble here, that you also, Geechee, briefly touched on, is that when you read under the gateway influencers, so they distinguish between the far right wing. So by black, they mean anybody who is black owned or involves black hosts or targets black audiences. And I'm just going to mute Ahmed for a quick second for the background noise, just so I can finish this thought, just real quick. So that satisfies who because somewhere in there is I got that definition of how they're determining what are these black outlets. But when they describe under the gateway, so it's the far right that they say are the real problem, but then they have what are the gateway influencers, where they do, as you noted, include the Breakfast Club, the Shade Room, 19 Keys, the Joe Budden podcast, Earn Your Leisure, and the Stephen A. Smith Show. The one note that I made in when I read that is that far right is distinguished as worse than gateway influencer, like the Breakfast Club, but says that the latter, but this summary says that the latter, that is the gateway influencers, become targets for the bad actors to take advantage of. So the bad actors see these gateway influencers as spaces they can get involved, influence in a negative way. But to me, this only clarifies the increased danger of what they're calling these gateway influencer spaces, as they become welcoming spaces for what is considered far right, but without an appropriate label. This only confuses audiences and makes the gateway influencers ultimately an improved conduit for the spread of dangerous narratives. So in other words, by saying that the Breakfast Club is an acceptable space for good conversation, that is, and the potential for positive or bad actor gateway influencing, but is a targeted space for bad actors to get away with spreading their misinfo or disinformation, then how can we distinguish these so-called gateways as any better than the far right? That's been part of my critique from the beginning, that if you're not overtly condemning these conservative, if you don't make that part of your core analysis, then you are a potential and even more dangerous conduit for these ideas, because you're under the label of being liberal or good for black people. All right, let me stop there, and Ahmed, I'll unmute you again. Sorry about that. I just wanted to
and if Diallo want to get in there and then ask a question or respond, and Ahmed respond, but then I want to play a older clip of the sister on the panel. But go ahead, Diallo, if you have something.
First, I commend you. When I first got the link, I went and examined African Stream. I mean, I really went way down the rabbit hole. And I have to say, from my own personal assessment, from hours of examining and reading and engaging with your platform, I didn't find any misinformation. And I was really, and I'm not saying I agree with everything, all conclusions or positions, but I didn't find any conscious attempt, or even just in terms of failure to vet sources or failure to vet information. To me, it's one of the more solid sources of information on social media. So I commend you and I appreciate you for doing that, bro. Beyond
and we
that,
all can't be the Breakfast Club. Can't expect everybody to reach that level.
We the left Breakfast Club, man.
I tell you, my intent was to come on here and share with the brother any forms of misinformation that I found on his site and ask him to explain it. But generally, I couldn't find anything, any source of misinformation. So it's genuinely wild. So I think more than anything, Marquise's engagement with African Stream show pretty much delegitimizes not African Stream, but the whole project and what they claim it's about. Because we would be remiss if we did not acknowledge, as Dr. Ball did, there is a deluge of misinformation out here in the community, and it's kind of akin to the earlier thing where you have an institution, the Black Church, that has been squandering the resources and time and energy of the Black community and exploiting the Black community for generations, start to attack the emerging financial gurus for engaging in what they do. And then you have a anti-Black misinformation, where we have people who've been out here battling misinformation for years, from the founding of social media and before then, now are being targeted. And then we have one of the biggest purveyor of misinformation, corporate media, and the liberal democratic establishment, the biggest purveyors of misdirection and misinformation, now asserting themselves as both the champions of truth and the policing of those who spread misinformation. So and there was this term agency capture, where the thing where something that is supposed to be regulated captures and gains control over the thing that is to regulate them. So the critique, now the people who were targets of that critique and condemnation for misinformation now become the champions of misinformation, which is very problematic. But they have a full-scale promotional teams and all these titles and resources that Black media doesn't have. And just the fact that they have to stretch it to the point where Candace Owens and Fresh and Fit have to be relabeled Black media when they are white as fuck media. They're further to the right of most white commentators. They're literally, Candace Owens is literally a white extremist in her ideology and what she advocates. But we got to carry the burden of Candace.
And
So that's crazy.
And that's some nasty work to like lump everybody together, include it. And then again, as they claim that y'all doing, is y'all foreign actors who are just spreading this information and connecting that shit to what Candace and the break. That, I mean, that's some wild ass.
Well, Hurricane Carter, which was an African boxer champion, had stated when he was incarcerated for a crime he didn't do, and when it comes to this system and the powerful institutions, any nigga will do. We're not even worthy of distinctions and categories and our various thought processes and ideologies don't matter. Any nigga will do. So they put up any Black person. And so that works both ways, whether it's they just put up a token or they want to condemn us as a collective. They just pick anybody. And if they can be classified as Black, so be it.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say something I thought was interesting. In the NBC article, they put a critique of foundational Black Americans, and they're guilty of the critique itself. So they say, if you forgive me while I just read this, they say, like foundational Black Americans who don't believe in the concept of pan-Africanism and have stressed that people who are not descendants of enslaved Black people should not speak for or on behalf of Black Americans. Yeah. But that's what they're criticizing African Stream for doing. So because we're not African-American descendants of slaves, because we're Africans from the continent based in Nairobi, they think that if we talk about the issues of the African diaspora in the United States, then we're foreign actors. Yeah. So on one hand, they critique foundational Black Americans for their lack of Pan-Africanism. But on the other hand, they're saying a Pan-African channel has no business talking about their African brethren in the United States. You know, they really just tried to grasp at anything they could to lump all of these different entities together and critique them all under the same banner.
But brothers, if we're being fair, as we are here on EYL every Friday, NBC has been leading the fight for Pan-African liberation for decades. So who better to be the situation? I mean,
but
no, you're right.
They
I mean,
turn
that's
around and they
point.
also, but that is a Black nativist argument.
So
they engage in the very behaviors that they claim to police and condemn.
Yeah, no, I mean that's and yeah.
So brother Ahmed, I want you to respond to this first after we play this clip too.
I think the press has a unique platform, unique access, and unique power to really tell the truth and cover these issues in a responsible manner. I think when it comes to issues like political violence, it's very difficult to cover because of the risk of amplification, the risk of disillusionment, the risk of making people afraid. And so when we're covering these types of issues, I think it's important to keep a couple things in mind. I think the first is, how are we making sure that we're not amplifying or inflaming political violence rhetoric? I think we've seen an increase in that rhetoric over the last 2 years and even the last few months, and I'm surprised at what, after we have gone through so much, I think, teachings on disinformation, how little we seem to have learned about how that very similar best practices also relate to conflict and tension. We should not be verbatim quoting white supremacists in our articles, right? A lot of extremists have a code and they know how to manipulate the media, and what they are saying is often not is often insightful and can help recruit. I think too, we have to make sure that the first thing we're doing in these articles is condemning violence. We're not amplifying what is being said, but we're
Whose violence?
Condemning
Palestinian violence against the Israelis.
This is
I condemn Hamas.
not widespread, but this is almost always
The
a faction
violence
or an
African Stream has been doing to the Biden campaign.
And that this is wrong. And state that first, not at the end of these
State it
articles.
first.
The violence of ships.
Third thing I would say is make sure that we're holding platforms accountable. And we're never letting them off the hook for their role in increasing and allowing
She holding y'all accountable, Ahmed.
freedom of speech to equal freedom of reach.
She's barely holding their attention.
And I would say the fourth thing is making sure that
They
we're
look
being
bored as
cautious
fuck.
of the
Hey, you can
impacts
stop it. You
that
can stop it
are
real quick, though.
story.
Woof.
So,
I was looking at
before
that.
you
You wanted
respond-
us to
before
go a
you
whole
respond-
one more minute.
Listen, before you respond. So she sounded like Barack sometimes talking. That's one. Two, it looked like she didn't rehearse this really well, but she just got this playbook. And this is as early as I could find. That's in 2022. But real quick before you respond, Asosa and her team track legislative developments and provide activists with real-time information in support of their efforts to protect the franchise. I don't know what franchise. Asosa also has a keen understanding on the strategies right-leaning organizations use to restrict access to the ballot. Before joining Fair Fight Action, Asosa held various positions on Democratic campaigns. She holds a BA in public policy from Duke University. But go ahead and respond.
Hey,
Yeah, I mean, she spent a lot of time to say not very much. That's the first thing I'd
whole
say.
bunch of nothing.
Yeah, a lot of. You're right with the Obama. A lot of the. I think Obama does it to make himself seem like he's really about to say something. But yeah, I mean, the issue with everything that she said isn't, in essence, what she's saying. It's just how selectively it's applied. Yeah. So the idea that, okay, we shouldn't promote violence, but you do promote violence all the time. You promote violence in Gaza. You promote violence in the DRC. You promote violence against people in Ferguson. You promote violence against people in Baltimore. So, you know, it's just not consistent. Nothing that these mainstream media outlets say in itself is usually wrong. It's just so selectively applied. Yeah. So white supremacy in their eyes is the guy with 3 teeth in his mouth with a straw hat that's got a Confederate flag, who is a white supremacist, but he's a white supremacist with relatively little power. Not the person that expands AFRICOM in the African continent. Not Hillary Clinton, who says, we came, we saw, he died, in reference to Muammar Gaddafi. Not President Eisenhower, who was bragging about, you know, we need to get rid of the African Fidel in regards to Patrice Lumumba. None of these people are white supremacists or violent actors. And that's the issue with the mainstream. They have all of the right, you know, buzzwords and right concepts, but they're very selective and warped in how it's applied. Pro-democracy. So the people rising up on the streets of Niamey in Niger to overthrow the French-backed leader who signs these crazy deals with French companies, which means that the Nigerians get nothing from the uranium in their country. That isn't democracy. Democracy is this bourgeoisie exercise where whoever has the best funded campaign wins the election. And people that fund the campaign are people that want to make sure that their material corporate interests are always protected. This is democracy in their eyes. This is what needs to be promoted. The violence is us rising up against this tyranny, not the tyranny inflicted on us. The white supremacists are the people with no power, not the people with a lot of power. So yeah, that would be my analysis of the 3 minutes or 4 minutes, I don't know how long it was, of her humming and ahhing.
Okay, but
so real quick though, that panel was the one I was talking about. So you'll see there's the Latino woman that was sitting next to her and the brother and even the host. They all on a platform just like this Impact thing, but it's a Latino version of it. So as you see we talked about with the imprints that the publishers have with like Charlemagne and all these other people, is very similar. They got their own imprint and they get to create this thing. So she's the leader of this thing, but it's created through Democratic Party. And but go ahead, Diallo.
I just want to play Caucasus Mountain Cave Dwelling Devil's Advocate, because with all that to say, misinformation is plaguing our community. And a lot of people will conclude, because I engage it every day, especially on the streets face to face, you know, and I encounter more face-to-face misinformation than I even do in online spaces, because I've kind of curated my online spaces. It's easier to curate than, you know, public engagement. So I think this will further entrench misinformation, because when such an illegitimate source comes out to condemn misinformation, I think it will reinforce many people who are steeped in right-wing reactionary ideology, politics, and rhetoric to say, oh, see, these are our enemies. These are the people condemning us, and point out the contradictions. Or as Kwame Ture said, a half-truth is more dangerous than a full lie. And because this article is an embodiment. So if I read that as my opposition or enemy, or those who are critiquing and condemning me, I would feel very secure in saying, hey, you know, these are the people, these democratic propagandists are the enemy. So if you're defined by your enemies, it's the bad guy. So what disturbs me again is that we as instead of combating misinformation, right-wing reactionary rhetoric and propaganda, we're here fighting for the title of truth tellers and the title of the combatants of misinformation, instead of engaging in the true conflict and the true problem, which again is another distract, divide, and conquer tactic.
The only thing.
So, I just wanted to double down on that point, that to me, this report so far, and I would like to see the full report. The executive summary reads to me, this is the point I was trying to make earlier, is as itself disinformation, because it's presenting as it is attempting to define what is or is not legitimate, as it looks to defend an illegitimate ruling elite. So I'm just going to have to say that until I see the full report.
But this particular situation, out of many situations that I didn't hate, I'm going to have to hate until further notice.
Jared, can I listen? Jared, bless your heart. You're too good. You're listen. If you sit at a
start
table
with that, I get set up. Here we go. Go
Jared,
ahead.
if you sit at a table and somebody brings you out shit soup as an appetizer, you don't sit there and be like, wow, this shit soup is terrible. I want to see what the entree is. Do you really suspect? You know, I think you're just giving them too much credit. You're going to allow the you sit.
You're right. I want to go into the kitchen and see how the shit soup was put together. I want to see. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're not waiting to see if maybe they redeemed themselves. Maybe
no, I want to see, how did you get here? How did we reach this?
You're like, I'm waiting for the whole report. I got to see the report. I thought
I want to see
because you were suggesting that maybe when we get the whole picture, we'll see in all these holes.
No, I wanted to see. Well, I want to see.
Correct.
I do want to see how they make their argument, and I suspect give more of themselves away. Although I think Ahmed has already clarified. No, not redemption. More evidence to support. But I did mean as a segue, because I know I cut Ahmed off. But now I've cut everyone off at this point. But
don't come on EYL if you expect otherwise.
But that one of the things they don't do, at least in this executive summary, is tell us how you've identified that list of 10 traits that they look to determine, and then how do they determine that African Stream or anyone else does or does not fit or rank on that scale of disinformation. So there's a lot that I would like to see, just by way of again seeing how the shit soup was constructed, and really as a way of it's like exculpatory evidence, I would see, in terms of the claims made against African Stream or anybody else.
So I got a question. I got a question. I want to start with Ahmed.
Table, you want to run it to the lab and put it under a microscope. Just flip the damn table over and let's keep it moving. Ain't nobody got time.
So I started to relook at Parenti's Event and Reality, and some of the arguments he make around media, how it doesn't do as much influencing as people gravitate to the media that confirm their biases. But as she said in her article, that her goal is to focus on this information that's undermining our basic humanity. But I know Diallo don't like us to talk about the Black ladies who are doing excellent work and having nice intentions. But let's start in 2015. 1% of humanity own over half of the world's wealth. Top 20% own 94.5% of that wealth. And the remaining 80% of us get to grapple with 4.5. So in terms of undermining people's basic humanity, that's a wild claim. But I wonder, from the three of y'all, start with Ahmed, what is this piece doing to the left? What is this piece? What do you think is the main agenda or attention of this piece? We mentioned a little bit, but all three of y'all kind of share y'all thoughts of what they are trying to accomplish with this report.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point you brought up. And that's my whole issue with this whole argument about disinformation and misinformation. It's not that disinformation and misinformation doesn't exist. It's the idea of who's going to police this. Because the people that are going to police so-called disinformation and misinformation are not concerned about disinformation or misinformation. They're going to weaponize that to attack us. The far right, by and large, are not a threat to their interest. We are. So what they do, I studied this at university. They called it the Copenhagen School of Security. It's where you use something that's really extreme to then police the rest of the community. For example, you'll have, a terrorist attack. Now that terrorist attack is used to justify all Black men being stopped and frisked. And so this argument about disinformation and misinformation, it's legitimate, but it's for an illegitimate end. Which is to target media that threatens their interests, particularly on issues of war. If it's to do with Cuba, if it's to do with what's going on in Russia, Ukraine, if it's to do with the DRC, Congo, you know, some of the corporations involved, anything that's really going to affect their bottom end. If we allow them to establish that they are the policemen that are going to enforce who is providing disinformation and who's providing misinformation, then what they'll do is they'll start off targeting legitimate targets, but only so they can then begin to target us. So that's my issue. And yes, as I mentioned previously, they'll never call out the disinformation or misinformation that's been used by them to have real effect on real people's lives. You know, I grew up in the UK. We were told Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and he could strike London within 45 minutes. Not true. We were told to justify the first Gulf War that Kuwaiti babies were being thrown out of incubators. Long and behold, the person that gave that testimony was the daughter of a Kuwaiti ambassador. We were told that Muammar Gaddafi's was giving his soldiers Viagra to go rape women, only to find out it wasn't true. We were even given biblical stories that he gave a speech in Arabic, and many people speak Arabic, so many Arabic speakers verified that this wasn't true. That he was going to go to the house of each rebel and kill the firstborn son. So they went biblical with it. I don't know what biblical story that is, but I'm sure I saw it in the Bible at some point. So they've told so many
Herod and Jesus, the one.
Yeah, so many lies, but this isn't disinformation. This isn't misinformation that's ever going to be targeted. So yeah, I feel like, yeah, there should be, I like the idea of the community notes, although I think that will eventually be co-opted as well. But I like the idea that if we're going to target misinformation and disinformation, it should be done by the people, by the community. It shouldn't be done by corporations who have on their board, you know, interest in Vanguard and BlackRock and these other entities. They shouldn't be the people policing disinformation and misinformation.
I love it. So Jared Diallo, what is this sister accomplishing with this hell of a report that she put together, where she talks about, you know, they're trying to dilute Black power, and obviously Black power you can find in the Democratic Party somewhere. But go ahead.
Well, I don't want to speculate on her thought process, but as you guys mentioned Obama and her pretty much picking up his cadence and his approach, I think she is another handpicked, a handpicked token. I'm just going to use my language. She's another token that will be used by the
definitely not a show pony, but a token.
And as she runs the gauntlet of elevation within the democratic centrist political sphere, then she'll hop over to the private sector. I pretty much, we've seen these individuals and actors go. They act on they become activists on behalf to help the community. Then they become key figures and players within the democratic establishment. And if they're viable enough to run for public office, then they'll do that. And after they run for public office or hold public office, then they'll return to the private sector and hold corporate positions and titles, and then they'll retire to a tenured position at a university like Jared. So that's pretty much the evolution and devolution of how things work with this cast or class of Negroes.
Jared, I'll follow you. Go ahead. What's she doing with her report?
I have predicted this woman's whole career path.
Well,
speaking Black women, Diallo, but go ahead.
Look, I don't know if you all can.
Blind, like white folks are colorblind. I'm gender. I don't see gender. Everybody.
I don't know if you all can hear me from way up here in my ivory tower.
In the clouds,
but in the clouds, literally in the clouds.
If I don't hear you, so it doesn't.
I know.
Matter.
I mean, really, that's facts. But if so, I just like Total Revolution says, I'm a member of the power elite. So listen carefully when I speak from this vaunted elevated
he is
position.
An elected official.
And I am an elected official, and even in the highest level of elected officials, I ran uncontested in this last election.
People know because we didn't want bodies to start turning up. I wouldn't have ran.
I pulled a Rich Paul. I put the call out. If you draft me, I'm sending them to Europe.
Oh
So
yes. We gotta let this Ebony Tower.
in the Ebony Tower. I'm in all the towers.
I'm locking that in.
Let that man go so I can go, Diallo. Go ahead. He interrupting you. So
I'm sorry. I'm telling too much truth. Right. I'm sorry. Let me stop telling too much truth.
So two things quickly before I forget. And I want to do this while our guest is still here because I thought because of the many kudos he and his crew deserve. I gotta shout out the masthead on their YouTube channel. This is fire, and I just want to put it out there that we at Black Liberation Media have some work to do. So Naka, Ear Doctor, I hope you're paying attention. That's a standard to reach. So shout out to them for that. But also, back to this report, I just made the note here on mine to add, because this was one of the things, the 10 prominent narratives that they've identified. So when you're asking me what I think about what they've done and what is being done, as Ahmed has already laid out, I think perfectly, has already been made clear here a number of times. They're not only attempting to determine for us what are the dominant narratives and prominent narratives, but then to define what it means to engage them. So that's why I definitely, again, that's why
But this particular,
we just go, have to hate until further notice, because I would like to see more about how are you defining revisionist history, for instance. What defines voter suppression? Is it suggesting alternative parties or new parties or different approaches? What does it mean to be, for instance, anti-LGBTQ plus? What does it mean to be in the gen? So, and I noticed, by the way, and this is why I noted it here, they don't have two things, Geechee, that you brought up. They're not coding here for or setting as a variable here pan-Africanism or Black power. So in other words, as you talk about, as Ahmed brought up, lamenting an absence of pan-Africanism or as they note in this executive summary, some sort of redefinition of Black power. What is your definition of these terms? What do you mean? What are you looking for when you say pan-Africanism or Black power? So I what I see them doing is what I think is a major problem happening right now across the board. There is an attempt to rebrand what it is to be left, to be radical, to be revolutionary, and it's to move it ever to the right, so that she and I'm sure I'm forgetting many, but that she and others can set the edge at the Democratic Party. And that is the farthest left that any of us should expect we could go. And if we go farther than that or condemn it, we are doing the work of disinformation. That's what I think is going on here. And I think but this particular, until further notice.
So a couple things that I saw her effort to present that she could be objective, right? So, but this objective public relation conduit for Stacey Abrams and the Democratic Party at large. Obviously, her putting herself in this doorway of making herself the protector of order and truth and democracy. She's showing you that liberals are just more appealing conservatives. And then again, as you was just talking about the left and the Black power, like her defining the scope of what is respectable political discourse and dialogue is wild as shit to me. And so I asked this question, especially now in the age of social media and celebrity analysis and all these other things. Maybe in the 70s and 80s, there's been, like, I believe, I read or study it to be an uptick in numbers of people who were very aware of how the media was not objective and it never really portrayed accurate portrayal of things. But do y'all think that is shifting now as time is changing with AI and social media and, again, celebrity analysis? Do y'all think that people are struggling with the understanding that news media, even social media, is not as objective as people in the 70s, 80s knew?
I don't think people are struggling with it anymore. I think people are more clear about the lack of objectivity, but have worsening analyses and interpretations of that lack of objectivity. So, in other words, when Pew Research, for instance, recently put out, or about a year or so, I think, put out their study that showed that between Fox News and MSNBC in this country, there's a full red-blue division, with Fox News even serving more by percentage. Like the MSNBC served the Democratic Party interest at like 97%, and Fox News served the Republican Party interest at like 98%. Something like that was the assessment. With the population fully divided and CNN playing sort of the middle ground. So people, meaning for me at least, as I understand your question, people in this country are clear that there's not an object. They're going where they want to go for what they think is what their appropriate source for news. In many cases, as this study is itself clarifying, their interpretation of the lack of objectivity is destroyed, and we're not running to what I've seen of African Stream, Black Liberation Media. We're running to a lot of these more nascent and increasingly popping up platforms of individuals and small collectives that are purporting to be representatives of some left or some right or whatever, but are actually, well, in the sense of the left, not representing anything actually left, but they're not representing anything actually new or a break from what has been established as a norm. So it's not leading to anything better in terms of a response. It's getting worse with the more pervasiveness and penetrating media that we have today than the 70s. It's worsening the analysis and the division and the conclusions being reached. Sorry.
So,
but there's a problem there though. When they say, well, one side supports Democrats and one supports Republicans, because in this society, everything that can be defined as political is filtered through the duopoly of the Republican and Democrats. So they literally say accepting the science of climate change is democratic,
right.
or accepting or having support for migrants and refugees is democratic. I've been called and attacked as a Democrat because I think I support gun policy, gun regulations. And so people say, so everything you do in the political arena can only be Democrat or Republican. So I think that even though the system wants us to think and function that way, they want us to function politically in terms of our thoughts, our analysis, and our positionality. They want us to think, well, I'm a Democrat or Republican, but I think we have to, even when they were talking about Biden's promises, I think in the terms of politics, especially in the United States, we need to start talking about policies, platforms, positions, independent of the Democrat and Republican Party.
That's perfect. So, like, Ahmed, I want you to answer this because that kind of leads to the next question. So, she talks a lot about people manipulating the media as opposed to this ideological or economic additions under which media is created or operate, right? And so, and then again, she kind of, as Jared was talking about, she doesn't even deal with the deliberate manipulation of corporate-owned media, and doesn't talk about the established images and narratives that lead people to believe that this is just the way things are. So when you think about trusted Black sources, like how could we be sure who is trusted and why, right? So what makes us credible? What makes Black media credible? Like, what are your thoughts around this idea of credibility or trusted sources?
Before I get onto that, I just want to touch on what Brother Diallo said, because it's very, very important and something that we've noticed on African Stream. So the demographic of our audience on different platforms differs. So on TikTok, our number one audience is in South Africa. But on Instagram, our biggest audience is in the United States, then followed by Nigeria, then followed by, I think they categorize East Africa, Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya as one. But one thing that we've noticed is there is this kind of desire amongst many people based in America, not all, of course, but to see everything through the lens of the duopoly, as you mentioned. So if we post something critical of Trump, we're Democrats. If we post something critical of Biden, so that's also what we try to issue in our response. That, you know, we know that you're attacking us because we put a few critical things about Biden recently, but we've also put critical things about Trump. We're following in that tradition, as Malcolm said, of understanding that it's the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans, the difference between the fox and the wolf. You get eaten either way. So I think it is an interesting point, and I think we shouldn't allow that to be the framing of Democrat, Republican, because, you know, just like in the UK, these represent different sides of the ruling class. Now, your question was, how do we know who's a trusted source and who's not a trusted source? Was that the question? Yeah, I mean, we've got to trust people to do the research. So the reason with African Stream, we started off very small. We were posting, it felt like we were just talking to our wives and girlfriends and boyfriends, because we got some female journalists as well. We're getting shares, and I'd send my mom, could you share this in your story? I'm really trying to get this out. And then just over time, through the credibility of, you know, if we make a mistake, we issue a retraction, we provide sources upon request, we research, people trust that what we're saying is credible, and they can verify it. I think we have to have more trust in people. If we were to say something that was false, within 5 minutes, the audience lets us know. So I'm not sure if I just buy that there's like, we get on average on our Instagram around 20 million views per week. I just don't buy that 20 million people are just yapping up disinformation and misinformation. If we were, it would be called out immediately by the audience. So I think we can't, it's back to the point that I made to the previous question. We can't allow them to determine who's telling the truth and who's not telling the truth. We got to kind of have put the power back on the grassroots with the audience. Of course, there are some platforms where a meme might go viral and it's not true and it's shared. But as a platform, it's very difficult for you to consistently put out news and it consistently not be true and the audience not call you out and still come back to see what you're saying. Do you disagree, Diallo?
Well, first of all, wait. I got to interject because I think both of you misunderstood what I said a moment ago, and I took a moment to write out my point because I'll take the blame that I wasn't clear. But I think, Diallo, you should know better, and I think you did a little bit of what happens around here, where you take a little piece of what is said and take it into a different direction to make a grander point, so you can get on your little soapbox. But let me just clarify.
You a Sosa friend? Okay.
Yeah, let me just clarify. So my point was not about defending the existence or even justifying the existence of the duopoly. It was about the greater capture of the population by the duopoly and their ability to disseminate their narratives through various apparently different outlets, such as those named in this report. Those of us who exist outside the duopoly are therefore pushed farther to the margins, and more so by far than in the past or in the 70s when you were asking from the beginning. So that was more of the point I was trying to make in my initial potentially fumbled comments that Diallo, just kicked down into the gutter. But
why you got the mic? Why you got the mic, Jared? Wait. Why Jared got the mic? In terms of, since he's the credible Hawk,
through a
Jared,
man, I can't even.
But y'all be throwing jabs. I gotta fight y'all off. I gotta be the referee stepping to get punched. But Jared, as the credible Hawk you are, how do you how do you determine what is true, what is credible, who's a good source? Like what's because again, I know people can watch this and be like, okay, well, y'all ain't, the credible source. Like,
no, but I keep saying we have look, we have a civilizational crisis in methodology. We are really struggling as humanity with that. So there's a number of things that I do personally that I would advocate. I mean, first of all, we have to check our own biases. And this is what I do appreciate about my grad school experience. One of the few things I do appreciate, that the focus on the method and being checked in our method, not our conclusion, not even our argumentation, just on the method. And I really appreciate that part. And I really, but we have to check our bias, acknowledge where we are. We have to acknowledge, at least internally, what we have or have not done to study whatever the topic is. We should acknowledge when we read something in an article, for instance, that we cannot confirm, but have a feeling about, and then just recognize that. And then we have to rely on certain training, certain study, certain organizational spaces, certain collectives. We should bring our ideas and have them vetted outside of our own mind and aside, so that others can respond, all of that. And then journalistically and participating in that form to a certain extent here, if there is a mistake that we make, we come back and clarify it.
Let's get it.
White
glasses Diallo. Do you agree, white glasses Diallo, or is it John Henry Clark or Dale Jones got quoted?
First of all, I thought that and this is why Jared don't have no friends, because I thought that I was reinforcing Jared's position. Because Jared, when he talked about MSNBC and Fox, I thought that he was articulating a report. He was quoting a report, and I was responding to the conclusions of the report in such a way that I thought was giving weight or further expanding on what Jared said. But he come out of left field throwing bolos.
I might be I apologize. I can apologize.
Not a competition.
Maybe
answer the question about credibility. I want to hear your answer too.
In talking about the duopoly, where he said he didn't say I believe, that I think, that I've concluded that MSNBC and Fox News are which would be true if he said it, but he wasn't simply saying, well, MSC and are propaganda arms of the two parties. But I was responding to the Pew Research that you were quoting, not your point of view or your conclusions, because I agree with your point of view or conclusions. But that's what I get for going up to Jared on the playground and asking if he wants to play. He kick you in the shin and say you tried to steal his ball.
He push you down. But go ahead.
But I also would like to say, since we flexing our formal education now.
No, man.
Throwing his degree up in his face. Let me say this, and then we can move on. As he learned about methodology, what I learned I didn't get to the Ivy Tower. I was in the Ivory basement because I couldn't afford the tower. But
poison ivy.
Another thing in terms of being able to understand truth is that whatever you're reading, no matter how eloquent, no matter how much data or accuracy, you should always try to understand the motives and objectives of the platform of the journalist. So methodology, which I think is at the top, but even with methodology, you should also look into the motivations and objectives of the journalist, the media platform, the newspaper, or the author. So just throwing that's something that I learned in the Ivory basement.
So I don't know if y'all remember, but it was a little while back when
now Jared's in his dressing room. See what you started?
No, you do it. I mean, you send everybody to the dress. You do. That's what you do. But do y'all remember? Y'all remember when the guy from Florida said that he can't have Castro to the south of him and Stacey Abrams to the north of him, and he's talking about how it would be a disaster. So he pretty much compared Cuba, revolutionary Cuba, and Castro to Stacey Abrams. So again, I'm wondering if y'all think that, in particular, I know Diallo has this thing about the Breakfast Club, but because me and Charlemagne has arguments around who he could bring on there and who he would and won't, the people that he bring on represents, as he would know it, as far as the left as they're gonna go. So it be a Jamal Bowman who Kadem Hamas, Tesla Figueroa. This lady hasn't been on there yet, but Stacey Abrams, Abrams. She show up at the Jeezy versus Gucci Man versus. But again, is this lady and their movement is that kind of like, again, doing something negative to the left? And I know this is an online thing, but do y'all see this as a attack or harm at all to people on the left and people ability to think more radically?
I'll let Brother Ahmed take that one. But you did promise to get me on the Breakfast Club.
You ain't getting on
Talk
there,
about
brother.
Biden's broken promises. What about
He once said I might get on there too.
Did he promise he could get you on too?
He did. He did at one point.
Jared was the only one I almost got on there, but
you promised me too.
Diallo, you know you wasn't going on no Breakfast Club.
I didn't. I had no ambitions to go on there, but then you came like the promotion fairy from the clouds. I'm your fairy promotion father. And,
you listen. You don't know how to act on that type of television, so I wouldn't even offer you over there. At least, Jared,
are you saying you didn't tell me that?
I don't remember telling you that. I wouldn't even think of you in the Breakfast Club. Only reason why I was going to get Jared on there because of the book. You will mess it up for all of us if you go over there. Anyway,
you're gonna make me dig out the receipt.
I know this is online, Ahmed. I know this is online, but does this attack? Is this an attack on the left? Is it a way that's gonna like? Is this something that you feel like it's gonna be a larger problem for us to deal with? Even on and off.
Which is the question? Is it about the Breakfast Club or attack on the left?
Well, more so of this report and this energy that Stacey Abrams, again, being compared to Castro and, being seen as radical or whatever else. And then her team is out there doing their work, like this work and other work, as I said, they have in the Latino community as well. But do you see this as, I guess, a larger attack on the left, even not online? Because this is made to be saying this just is an online thing, but do you see this thing also, impacting communities outside of online spaces?
Yeah, I mean, they've been trying to get the left out of here. Historically, that's why so many members of the Black Panther Party had to go to Algeria, and this is there's what they figured out was that instead of trying to take out the left, they will present us with who is the acceptable left. And that's something that we see happen in the UK. We have liberal establishment media coming out on YouTube that present themselves as the left, but they're not really the left. When you break down what they talk about, it doesn't threaten the establishment in any way. And the same for in the US. Now, the Breakfast Club's an interesting one because I would categorize them into that category, but then I wouldn't. The reason why I'd say I wouldn't is because I was actually very impressed when, if you remember, this whole Stop the Genocide in Tigray stuff was happening, which was basically a TPLF, which was the government in Ethiopia for 30 years, the US proxy government in Ethiopia for 30 years, was trying to re-establish power and was trying to use CNN and the liberal media establishment to push this idea that there was a genocide happening in Tigray and that we needed Western foreign intervention to save the people of Tigray. But the Breakfast Club invited on the father of Nipsey Hussle, who comes from a revolutionary background, who was part of the resistance to this kind of propaganda machine that the CNN and NBC and the liberal media establishment were pushing out with some of their associates in the NGO sectors. And the Breakfast Club gave him a platform. So I feel like, the Breakfast Club is problematic in many ways, but the idea in the midst of the US war machine gearing up for some sort of intervention, for them allowing an alternative voice to say, actually, all this is bullshit, speak to some Ethiopians, this isn't what's happening. There's this kind of ethno-nationalist militia group. They're trying to regain power. The US wants them to regain power. Ethiopia is a population of 110 million. It's been a strategically important ally in the Horn of Africa, in Africa, for the last 30 years. And the US is unsure about the new Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, although things have now changed. and it looks like Abiy Ahmed is back in the US camp. But the idea that they allowed, you know, an alternative voice, a dissenting voice. Now, liberal media doesn't allow dissenting voices when it comes to matters of war and peace. So yeah, that's my analysis on Breakfast Club, the left and the real left.
Please don't stop your analysis at that one example, though, because that's part of my problem.
Yes.
Like the fact that they will at times appear to do something positive gives more license, room, and credibility to all the mess that they get wrong on a regular basis. That would be, so that's where, so that's part of my concern. But I hear you.
Yeah, I don't have any other examples, to be honest. That's
my point.
That's my one example. I gave more examples than they gave about African streaming. That
No, you sure did. Yeah. You at least had some specific reference to make, for sure.
More than I could have come up with.
I mean, I think, yeah.
Don't let Jared make you feel bad. You have more examples than I did.
So is it safe to say that she's, as Diallo might have said, she's just another image or way to creatively arrest the development of potential radicals and allow the Democrats and the Republicans to maintain control over the ideological ideological framing?
I don't think that this latest piece of propaganda and this latest token objective is more so to stop people from becoming radical or to convert radicals back to centrism or liberalism. I think it's more so tending the flock. You know, it's mending the fence around those who are already locked into the status quo more so. And I think that it doesn't, from reading that, because I think it is an attempt to, because the center, the liberals, the Democrats are about to start bombarding our community with misinformation. It's an attempt to really provide cover for establishment status quo Democratic misinformation. And if you doubt that, and if you question that, or if you challenge that, then you are a victim of misinformation. So I think it's a preemptive strike, as George Bush would tell us. It's more of a preemptive strike to maintain what is already in their possession, because they even had to acknowledge, with all this going on, the vast majority of Black voters are, which I don't condemn the Black community for this, but the vast majority of the Black community is still firmly within the Democratic camp. And we see that it's pretty much a political third rail for Black people to come out as MAGA or even Republican. And the Republicans have put millions, if not billions of dollars and a considerable amount of resources to bring more Black people over to the Republican camp. They've done everything except for change their policy platform and advocacy, but they've done everything except for what they do. So I think they just are trying to hold on to the victory as opposed to win something.
Sure. So I've just gone through the YouTube comments. I was just having a look through. Someone said, rather than criticize the sister's report, we're mocking her for sounding like Barack Obama. So wait.
I'm sorry. If I can't find it for you, can you say that again, please? What?
Yes. Somebody said, rather than giving an analysis on the sister's report, the only thing that we have to offer as a collective, the four, is to mock her sounding like Barack Obama. Now, I'm assuming this person has just jumped in, missed the beginning, etc. So just for the sake of that one person, I think maybe we can just highlight exactly what we said at the beginning, but just...
Well, you know what? Better yet.
Things over at African Stream, but here at EYL and Black Liberation Media, no backseats.
Listen, I got a bunch of that on her whole report.
And review the notes. Ask somebody Ask your partner if you can look at their notes. I'm not repeating all that.
So, well, listen, I got a bunch of notes on the whole paper. I read the whole things a couple times. So,
but wait, if
I
Ahmed read the comment correctly, the comment is wrong on various levels in leading to your own error there, Geechee, yourself.
Post the comment.
Remember, I can't find it, but remember, we were not able to respond to the report because none of us have been given the actual report.
We got the
what we are responding to is either the executive summary or what apparently is bad NBC reporting about the executive summary. So that's part of the problem. Exactly, man. Like we have made. I know I made an attempt earlier this week to reach out. I didn't think it should take more than a few days to get a copy of the full report once requesting it, as they said you must. But they didn't send it. And if anybody from Onyx wants to come on here and defend the report,
I invited her on too. She's in Atlanta. I invited her on. But
so I mean, okay, that's what I'm saying. So like, I don't know. I wish I could have found the comment, but Leah, let's be clear. We are responding. Ahmed and African Stream were called out in a reporter's report of a report that none of us have been able to see. And then what we have been able to see is flawed. That's what it is, crazy flawed. So if our analysis of those flaws is insufficient to that commenter, hey, send us an email detailing our errors and the accuracy of that executive summary.
So let me read this. Can I read some Parenti and I want y'all to respond to it? Because I also think.
And here you go, Geechee, bringing the white man back into the conversation.
Hey, listen, if we gonna quote some white people, that's the white people I'm quoting. So anyway, in terms of intention, I'm gonna finish Diallo. You ain't about to mic. You ain't about to up mic. You ain't about to up mic me, Diallo. I'm gonna keep talking until you stop talking. Okay, there we go.
I'm supporting every time I'm trying to listen. I'm done.
Okay, Parenti says misinformation is sometimes so widespread that the line between intentional and unintentional distortion is not always easily discerned. Neither for those who transmit the untruths, nor for those of us who try to detect them. I know Jared don't like to engage in this, but her intentions, could you easily see her and their intentions with this report, starting with Ahmed and then Diallo, then Jared? I think their intentions is very clear as hell, but y'all go ahead. In terms of intentions, did she have the best intentions? Go ahead.
Well, it's difficult, as the brother mentioned, to talk about the intentions when we've not read the full report. But from what I gathered, from the way the journalist that wrote about the report analyzed it, after speaking to the author of the report directly, it seems to be the Democratic Party has relied on this black support. If we don't tackle, quote unquote, these people criticizing Biden that we've categorized as misinformation, although the support base is good now, the future Democratic candidate might not have the same support that they've relied on for the last 50, 60 years. That's what I gather to be the intention. But yeah, as mentioned, it's difficult to say without reading the full report, but that's definitely the way that the summary was presented, and it's definitely the way that the NBC article was presented. About a report about misinformation, they mentioned Joe Biden in the NBC article on 4 separate occasions. But yet, only one of them was related to a source of disinformation, which I thought was a strange one as well, because it was the Shade Room, which I'm not a big fan of them. I don't think I'll follow them. But they said something about Joe Biden and they retracted it. So again, if that's their one example of misinformation, a journalist making a mistake and then correcting their mistake is actually in itself not misinformation. Misinformation is making the mistake, leaving it out there, not acknowledging the mistake, and and keeping it on their page as truth. So yeah.
So I think I saw clearly there's a window for extremists and foreign actors. They already threw y'all in the window of the foreign actors. And then extremists, again, Diallo and Jared, the intentions behind what this sister and her team has done to easily throw people in. I mean, I see it to easily throw people who probably have a sober or accurate analysis as either foreign actors, y'all don't know the hell y'all talking about over there, or y'all might be extremists. But again, intentions Diallo.
Again, I think their motivation and objectives is to reinforce and sustain Democratic Party hold over Black votes. If I was on the Democratic DNC payroll, I would say you can maintain your hold and justify your level of control over, or not even control, but your appeal to Black voters, to Black constituents, by having more favorable and progressive policies and more anti-imperialist policies. But since they're not going to do that, they have to, it's basically liberal fear mongering. And we hear a lot about right-wing fear mongering. The immigrants are coming to take your jobs. They want to groom your children in public school. Well, liberal fear mongering is, if you have a thought, a conclusion, or a point of view that is contrary to the Democratic establishment, you might be mind controlled by foreign interest or Black radicals. So it to me, it's more just maintaining the flock, not necessarily trying to change anyone from one point to another, because I don't see any mass exodus from the Democratic Party of the Black population, but that flock still needs to be tended. The fence needs to be maintained and mended. So it's basically housekeeping, election cycle. And I had posted on social media a few weeks ago, they're about to start, maintaining and pandering to Black voters. Again, this happens. And this is a thing. Things like this happen every single election cycle. And every single election cycle, we go like, wow, look at what they're doing. I would be more surprised if this type of shit wasn't highlight and figures, people we never even heard of, all of a sudden activists like Obama, community activists and organizers just pop up overnight with a strong voice on corporate media, speaking on behalf or speaking to issues of our community, and nobody heard of them afterwards. So, and I'm surprised at you, Geechee.
What I do?
Because you didn't dig in their business. You didn't do your.
I actually did. No. I did.
Talk about Act Blue and the funding, and you didn't.
I did. I highlight BlackRock. I did, but you know why I let up? Because the last time I did this, you accused me from some chauvinism and some patriarchal. I was like, listen, I don't want to go too hard on the Black woman because I don't want the brother to get me.
Not why.
But anyway, let me finish. While you're here, since you over there in that room. Could you please, Diallo, speak to the people about this idea of divisions? Because there's always this, oh, you're just being divisive and fewer divisions. Please give me a quick analysis on this rhetoric.
Well, I've been accused of being divisive by you.
What? When? You talking about with the church people?
Among others, but
come on, bro.
But hey, you want to talk and lie? You're gonna go sit here and spread misinformation. So now anybody that wants to attack Africa Stream for being a platform of misinformation, they can screenshot this and show them sitting next to an agent of misinformation on a platform like you, because you just said that I attacked you, and it lasts around.
I didn't say you attacked me.
Or whatever.
Listen. I could have, and I still can prove how this person is used by the Democratic Party.
And that was not my issue with what you said. That is not my issue whatsoever.
The word show pony. You didn't like the word show pony.
We're not going to revisit that argument.
But just keep going.
Still healing.
My bad.
So where was we? Oh, but I do want to come out in favor of attacking or targeting or highlighting someone's cadence, someone's appearance, someone's stance, and engaging in mockery and belittlement. I think we on the left are too concerned with being good and much less concerned with being successful. And when people are like, oh, you're going to talk about somebody. Yes, I think you should. I think if someone conducts themselves in such a way to court mockery, it is a long-standing tradition from all political engagements. They freaking had Adolf Hitler fighting against Donald Duck during World War II, and nobody came and says, well, we should really discuss Hitler's points of views and arguments as opposed to just having him fight a cartoon character and be beat up by Donald Duck. This shit is war, the art and act of war, an art and act of education. We are a multifaceted and diverse people, and I think people can comprehend. And Jared didn't defend me when they attacked me for commenting on Yvette's hairline. I'm telling you, I'm bringing back the art of dozens, mockery, put downs, and making fun of that was demonstrated by everybody from Garvey to Fred Hampton. So handkerchief head Negroes should be called that as we dissect and destroy their positions and arguments.
100. And you know, Napoleon wasn't even small. It was just during the Napoleon Wars that they used it as propaganda to make it seem like Britain had the upper hand. It was just average height.
And it worked. To this day.
Even to this day in Shrek, the guy that's like playing a Napoleon character that made him like 2-3 foot tall.
But we can't use propaganda. We can't use the same tactics of demeaning and mockery against our enemies and agents.
See, you touch on an important point. What all of these attempts, you know, you're divisive, you're spreading misinformation, you're using mockery, you're not doing. Someone criticized me. They said my response was emotional to the journalist. It's all a strategy to put us on defense. Because what we're actually doing is trying to, you know, dismantle their systems of oppression, systems of imperialism, brick by brick. But if we're focused on, no, you know, I am professional. I do check. I do give 2 sources. I do this and I do that. Of course, that's important, but it's an attempt to put us on defense, to pause on what we were doing. You know, that response that I gave to the NBC article, which has, you know, been well received, took me like half a day. I had other stuff I wanted to do. You know, there's a meeting I was meant to meet with some comrades from Congo. There's other stuff I meant to do, but yeah, I'm spending half a day, you know, looking up this Marquise, looking up how he used to work for Reverend Al Sharpton, who's a former FBI, and doing my research, doing all this type of stuff. But it's actually a waste of time. So we've also got to be wary of not playing the defense all the time, and actually going on the offense. We are not the people that should be put on trial. We are not the people that should be standing in the courtroom. Our job is actually to be the prosecutor, and what they're actually trying to do is turn the prosecutor into the defendant.
So if I could just add, because to all those great points, despite Diallo's misrepresentation of what happened on that whole thing there with Yvette, the intentions. So this question of intentions, Geechee, you got my thing a little bit wrong there. So the intentions I would not want to assess are hers. That is, for instance, as to why she would think this report is appropriate or well done, or why she is in this, why she chose to be in this political lane. Those intentions, I don't think, I don't want to take the time to try to figure out. I do support assessing the intent or the politics of the public reporting or arguments. And that's where I think Ahmed is exactly right. You can, and you are exactly right. You can see in the framing of even this executive summary, the goal here is to defend the Democratic Party, Biden in particular, and then to define as extremists even anybody. Really, I think there's even a swipe at forms of nationalism by taking a shot at FBA nativist, extreme separatists, stuff like that. is I think meant to rebrand and misrepresent nationalist endeavor, et cetera, and so forth. And then, as was also mentioned, to redefine pan-Africanism along the lines of MSNBC and its sponsors, owners, and allies, as opposed to what we would think is appropriate here. So that I do think is where we should and can endeavor to discern some intent in what we're looking at. Yep.
In terms of division, though, like this idea, I think it's always like, I mean, we know how it's used, but this idea of being divisive, as if like we are not.
Well,
okay with
Ahmed said it correctly. I mean, that's the point. I mean, it's to put us on the defensive and to make it seem like if it's again to judge the response to the abuse as opposed to the abuse itself. Oh, you're emotional. Oh, you're being divisive. Oh, I mean, they did the same thing. I mean, the same thing has been done to basically every form of leader or movement or media outlet that has seemed threatening at some point or another. It's to say, oh, you all are. I mean, not that we're on the same political page. The late John Thompson, one of my favorite things that I remember him saying, the former coach of Georgetown University Hoyas. I do like that he said when he was accused of playing the race card on the radio, he said, I'm not playing the race. He said, if I'm playing the race card, you something like you dealt the hand. Like you dealt this. So if I'm playing the card, I mean, that's where we're at. So, but the point is, as Ahmed pointed out, is really to put us on the defensive and to make it seem like our any attempt to defend against their illegitimate critique or criticism is in itself evidence of our error or our fallibility or poor position or wrong argument or whatever. But no. So, and I agree. I get it. I think Diallo, just to be clear, I think you make a good point about being hostile to our political enemies. So where I get stuck and where I got stuck in that moment that you're referencing is that I keep, and even with my own arguments, I keep trying to stay focused on the argument itself and to say, but that doesn't seem to work either. So I think,
all right.
Yeah, so I stand incorrect on that one. All right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I mean,
bad. I just saw dead air. I wanted to cut.
No, I was about to say, like, I was stuck on mute. But yeah, I don't. I mean, I think we went into as much as we could of all that was in that summary, and maybe if we get the full report, we can go more. Or maybe if she responds and be like, "Yo, I'll come on and talk about it," we could do a part 2. But
I would definitely. Well, Ahmed, while you're here, I just want to again thank you for joining us, and I would want to encourage publicly that however whatever communication you all have that we maintain it and look to have you or other of your colleagues back on here, and maybe even to make more focus of the work you do on our platform. I mean, just to elevate what is already a strong outlet. But yeah,
definitely. And we'd love to have you guys on a platform. We have a podcast called Pan-African Attitude. We discuss different issues affecting Africans in the continent and the diaspora. And yeah, despite NBC's best efforts, we care deeply about the 40 million Africans that reside in the United States. And we'd love to hear, about the struggles that you guys are facing and in any way that we can support. And likewise, there's just one thing I was going to say more about this NBC article, because, the response to the article has been overwhelmingly positive. However, there's been a few liberals in the comments saying, the guy is just doing his job. Why are you attacking him? Why are you attacking his network? We didn't really attack him. We mostly attacked the network. We just said that he's been used by his network because, he's a black guy. So who else to attack an African media channel than a black guy? We quoted Malcolm X when he said, they'll send one of us to kill one of us just so they can say it was one of us. But the rest of our critique was about the network itself. And, you know, who are they to criticize us? You know, they interviewed Joe Biden on the 26th, I think, of November, shortly after his election victory in 2020. And they didn't ask him any tough questions. It was a celebration rather than an interview. You know, they tried to bask in the glory of his recent election victory. But I do want to challenge this idea that, not from you guys, but the few people in the comments saying, oh, the guy's just doing his job. We can't accept that argument anymore. Yeah, you can't just work for a network for like NBC, then try to do a smear piece on behalf of NBC. Then when you get challenged on said smear piece, your defense is, oh, we're just doing it. You don't have to do that job. There's many other jobs that you can do. You don't have to work for corporate media. You don't have to push, you know, an establishment agenda. You don't have to push a pro-war agenda. This idea that we're just doing jobs, that we're not accepting that. I was gonna say we're not accepting that anymore. But to be honest, those that came before us didn't accept it. People were called, you know, what they call it, jive turkeys and all these other names from the Americas. So we didn't accept it then, and we don't accept it now.
No, right on. Absolutely.
So a while back, we were actually trying to bring brother on about the documentary he did in the Sudan. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work that of yours that we want to engage in, and definitely bring you back anytime we can. Appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, listen, no, Ahmed, thank you very much for coming through. And I definitely look forward to building again at some point. Appreciate you.
Definitely. And even though I've been on this show, I've enjoyed the little, we call it banter, that you three have amongst each other. Keep that in the show. Keep that in the show for sure. It works. You know, just because we're talking about serious topics,
sometimes
doesn't mean we can't have a bit of fun and poke and joke with each other. So
yeah.
I really enjoyed that. But yeah, thank you guys.
No, right on. Anytime. Take good care. Peace, because we know you're willing to fight for it, like Fred used to say. Take care.